Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2020 and to your review of the 2020 Spanish Grand Prix Qualifying. We spoke about it on Friday, we spoke about it a little bit earlier on in the preview on Thursday. Spanish Grand Prix in the middle of August. We all know tyres were going to be a huge talking point, and yet today in qualifying things quite didn't pan out as expected. The tyre evolution, the track evolution was so much that all of the teams were forced to run on these soft tyres, and I think despite today's session not being the juiciest of the season so far, I think it sets up a really nice and interesting strategic Grand Prix for tomorrow. So if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. Hopefully you enjoyed today's qualifying review. If you're trying to avoid spoilers, this is not the place you want to be, but come back afterwards once you've watched the session. Spoiler warning out of the way, this is your results for the Spanish Grand Prix Qualifying. And as expected, as it has been in almost every race bar one in 2020, it was a Mercedes front row lockout. Lewis Hamilton claiming pole position once again over the course of this season. Bottas, 500ths off his teammate, so close. A tiny little mistake in the final sector on his final run just gave Hamilton the edge, but to be fair, both of them so close. This is the circuit we know Mercedes were going to be good at, but Verstappen and Perez and almost Lance Stroll just a second behind. I think they will have a threat in the Grand Prix. Verstappen in third place wasn't able to get through on an alternate strategy, didn't attempt an alternate strategy in Q2. As I said, the gaps between that whole midfield was so close. All of the runners choosing to use soft tyres throughout the entire session, Q1, Q2 and Q3. The only other driver to try something different, Kimi Raikkonen, who did a stint on the mediums during Q2. Sergio Perez on his return, I was wondering whether he'd be a little bit rusty, but P4 and P5 for the two Racing Point cars, not bad at all. P6 for Alex Albon, still not where he wants to be, still a gap to his teammate, but much better this time around. Carlos Sainz, the home hero, P7 for McLaren. Norris continuing that incredible streak in Q3. Charles Leclerc and Pierre Gasly, once again, both of those two just about scraping through into Q3 and doing a cracking job, but P9 and P10. Sebastian Vettel failed to get through to Q3 once again. He's only got through once over the course of this season, beating Danny Kvyat, Daniel Ricciardo down in P13. What a day it was for Kimi Raikkonen. Finally, we see an Alfa Romeo get out of Q1. Raikkonen doing a really solid job here at the circuit Barcelona Catalunya. Esteban Ocon, want to talk about him and that incident at the end of practice 3 this morning with Ocon and Magnussen. They just about got that car built, sent out for quali, a couple of places behind his teammate, but behind Kimi Raikkonen, that's a big surprise today. Kevin Magnussen was P16, Grosjean, after the team worked on the car overnight, lucky to get out, but P17 not the best from Roman today. George Russell again out qualifying Latifi, but out in Q1 for only the second time in 2020 for Georgie Boy, and Antonio Giovinazzi P20. Before we get into the debrief of today's session, your grid for tomorrow's race looks like this, and so far it's just the same as the quali result. Another front row lockout for the two Mercedes, Verstappen and Perez on row 2. It's then Stroll and Alex Albon row 3. The two McLaren lockout in row 4, and the row 5, Leclerc and Gasly. No penalties in that top 10, and it's the exact same story in the bottom half. Vettel, Kvyat, Ricciardo, expect those all to be pushing early doors. Brand new sets of tyres for those. Wouldn't surprise me if they all went for an alternate strategy. The top 10 having to start on those softs. Vettel, all of them really, outside that top 10. I feel they don't really have a lot to lose if they go on the alternate strategy. Raikkonen, a great job once again. P14, Ocon 15 alongside K-Mag. That's certainly a juicy lineup considering everything that went on this morning on row 8. Row 9 is Grosjean and Russell, and on the back row of the grid, Latifi and Giovinazzi. Quite a quiet session today, actually. I don't know what I was expecting. Qualifying, I think, this year, for the most part, has been really fun. Thanks to the midfield being all over the place. We've seen Ferraris dip out in Q1, Q2. We've seen Mercedes being a class of their own, but apart from that, it's anyone's game. Williams consistently getting through to Q2 with George Russell. We've seen Haas occasionally be better than they are on a Sunday and a Saturday. We've seen McLaren's do great, McLaren struggle, Renault's do great. It's just been a real mixed bag. And today in Spain, it was one of the first times this year where we've kind of got quite a straightforward grid. There's no one who's crazily out of position. We've got 3 of those back 3 teams, all of them bar Kimi Raikkonen, going out in Q1, which is what you would expect. Renault was slightly off the pace than what you'd expect, but no real big storylines. But again, I think tomorrow's Grand Prix, your big story is going to be at the front. Are Mercedes going to hold on to those tyres? We've seen over the last 2 races, they've not been able to do so. Verstappen is right on the back of their tails. Perez looked really strong today as well. So I'm not calling off a Verstappen win and a Perez podium just yet. But Mercedes are looking strong, don't get me wrong. I think we'll start with that backpack, work our way forward up to the 2 Mercs at the front. We'll go on to driver of the day, ones to watch, and we'll get ready for the race tomorrow. So, the backpack. Is there any real surprises? Not particularly. We've got so used to, over the course of this year, it being the 2 Williams, the 2 Haas, and the 2 Alfa Romeos. That are the pretty much back markers, if you want to call them that, which isn't a huge surprise considering where Williams have been over the last few years and considering the huge changes at Ferrari to their power unit this year. But in P1 and P2, practice 1 and 2, Grosjean seemed to have a real turn of pace, 5th and 6th in those 2 sessions. They had to do a lot of work on that car overnight, and still, through Q1, it was looking like Grosjean, out of that backpack, had the pace. But when push came to shove right at the end of the session, made a mistake on his lap. I think he said there was Carlos Sainz, I think it was, traffic in the way, just about missed out on Q2. Teammate just pipped him, which really surprised me because K-Mag had been about half a second off Rogro for pretty much the entirety of the weekend so far. But that huge story in Q1, Latifi didn't out-qualify Russell, that we were maybe thinking could happen. No, that didn't quite happen. But Kimi Raikkonen getting through for Alfa Romeo. They've been such on the back foot out of that back 3 teams. It's been Alfa that have consistently been at the bottom, consistently just never quite getting things go their way. So this is a big result for Kimi, who's been really quiet this year. He had a great start to life at Alfa Romeo last year, but this year, no points. Giovinazzi was able to pick up a couple in the first race of the season. We've not really seen a lot of fight from Kimi Raikkonen this year. Not necessarily his fault. The car's just not been great. So this is a real confidence booster for the team. I think it'll be a little bit uplifting for Kimi, especially out qualifying Ocon. But those back group, it's just the same story, I would say, from the rest of the season. But in front of those back 3 teams, Renault, Raikkonen splitting the 2 Renaults, Ocon and Magnussen was the big talking point from today. Daniel Ricciardo, 13th. He'll have tyre choice. I think he'll have fun tomorrow in the Grand Prix, overtaking, working his way forward, but not the best day from the team. But Ocon and Magnussen, this is why I really would like to know your thoughts in the comment section below. No penalties have been awarded. I think it would be silly to give out penalties, considering the fact that Ocon comfortably got out in Q1 and it hasn't really hurt his weekend running. But the whole situation is just very, very strange. Ocon on a slowdown lap. Magnussen initially was on a push lap. So Ocon's told, get out the way, let Magnussen through. Magnussen goes through, decides he's not going to go on that push lap, slows down. Ocon's then trying to get out the way of the Williams, but not looking at Magnussen. Magnussen slows down. Ocon almost into the back of K-Mag, but slams it into the wall instead, which kind of was the right thing to do, because if he had hit him, in the sense that would be a huge investigation, teams would be arguing back and forth. So I think we've kind of got away from that a little bit by Ocon just binning it on his own. Very strange event. I think what I find strange, and it's an issue I've had for a long time, is Haas's communication always just seems to be a little bit off. And the fact that Kevin decided to do the first 3 corners, then decided he was not going to do the push lap, is slightly strange. And for Esteban, if you're in his position, if you see a car bombing it past, you expect them to just continue on their flying lap. So I can understand why he was confused. He was waiting for the Williams behind. It was a big mess. Don't want to see that again. And I think if you watch practice at all, You will know that Crofty, Karun and Nico Rosberg all very vocal, and that there should be some kind of more stringent and strict rules about low lap times and slowing down during practice sessions, because though it was amusing to see what happened, we don't want to see that kind of thing happening in a practice session. But a quiet day from the Renault boys, and not often we talk about practice 3. Danny Kvyat, P12 almost for the first time this season, nipped into Q3 but wasn't quite able to do so. Vettel then almost nipped through into Q3 but just missed out from Pierre Gasly, I think it was. Very unlucky for Seb, 2,000ths away from scraping through into Q3. Would have been only the second time this season Vettel would have nipped into Q3, which is crazy. But again, I wouldn't be too disheartened. It's going to be a hot race tomorrow. Strategy is going to be key. If these guys can start on the mediums, on the hard, potentially they can convert to a 1-stop and other drivers may have to convert to a 2-stop. Also, if Vettel doesn't do what he did last time out on the opening lap, if you know, you know, and if he can get a couple of positions on that opening lap, he's only 2 places behind his teammate. I think he could be in a good position tomorrow. We all know the story, we all know the season Seb is having, and if he can just get a big result here, that'd be huge for his confidence. Gasly, again scraping through into Q3. He's smashing it this year, he really is. He won't want a repeat of the race in Silverstone last time out for the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, and he will be under threat from his teammate and Sebastian Vettel and the Renaults. But if he can get a good start, if he can replicate the performance he did in qualifying in the race, he should be fine. Leclerc, just like Gasly, another great job in what you could argue is subpar machinery. But even Leclerc and Gasly, when you look at it on the timing board on our left-hand side, they're not a million miles in front of their teammates, but consistently out-qualifying their teammates, and credit where credit's due to the both of them. The McLarens, 7th and 8th. Not bad. Norris, I didn't know this statistic until it popped up on the Sky F1 feed. Only Norris, Verstappen, Bottas and Hamilton have been in every Q3 this season, and Norris continues that, which is an awesome statistic for Lando. Out-qualified by Sainz, which hasn't happened often this year, but very, very close between the two of them. Looking strong. I think will be under threat from those cars on the mediums if they do that alternate strategy further in that Q2 group. But the car's looking good. They've had a good turn of pace this year. They were good in winter testing here, so I'm looking forward to a good race. And of course, Sainz not in front of his home crowd, unfortunately for him, but his home Grand Prix always runs well here. I think he'll have a good result. Albon, better. Much, much better today. 6th and still about 7/10 of teammate Verstappen. Isn't optimal. It's not what he wants, but it's a step forward. Once again in Q3 this week, finally gets rid of that statistic of being out-qualified by Gasly. 3 races in a row. He's finally got that back over what is kind of one of his biggest rivals in F1, which is quite interesting to say. 6th place, if he can get those 2 racing points, which we have seen Albon is better in the race than he is in quali, this is a step forward in the right direction. So I hope some of the critics get off his back this time around. Not a bad job from Alex Albon. 5th and 4th for Racing Point. If you'd have said that 6 months ago, you'd have thought it'd be a fluke. But they seriously are comfortably the 3rd best car. On occasion, the 2nd best. Perez and Lance Stroll are 2 of the best drivers in the field at looking after tyres. I mentioned it earlier. Wasn't quite sure whether Sergio would be a little bit rusty on his return. Nope, not whatsoever. He's straight back on the pace. Just missing out on pipping Max Verstappen to P2. I think it was a 10th and a half, 2/10, the gap between the two of them, which is incredible considering what this team have gone through over the last couple of years. And yes, there's question marks about the legality of that car, and that's still rumbling on. As we speak, there's still protests from Ferrari, from Renault, but it's still a great job from that team. Max Verstappen P3, Bottas P2, Hamilton P1. Is it a surprise? Not really. Max 7/10 off the 2 Mercedes, which is closer than I thought it would be at a circuit like this. This is always a circuit which Mercedes absolutely crush it, but closer than he's been all year long. That kind of gives us a bit of hope for tomorrow. And the 2 Mercs, I said it earlier on, class of their own once again. Bottas just missed out on Hamilton, but lap times almost identical. Barely anything to split between the two of them. And the race, I hate to say this, the race between the two Mercedes, I think will be determined before we get to turn 1 or on the run down to turn 1. I think the race behind, the threat from Verstappen, the threat from Perez, that's going to be where the real race is. So, fun race set up for tomorrow. Lots of stories in that midfield and seeing how well Albon's going to get forward. But Hamilton and Bottas, a Mercedes masterclass once again. And before we go, driver of the day, ones to watch. And actually, I'm going to give my driver of the day to Kimi Räikkönen. You probably would have guessed that, actually, considering how much I've already bigged him up in this video. But the season he's had so far has been disappointing. It's not been great. There weren't, to be honest with you, many other standout drivers in today's quali session. It was quite bog standard. Albon did a much better job than he's done so far, but still half a second, over half a second off his teammate. I can't really give him that. Hamilton and Bottas so close with each other. Sainz and Norris about equal. Perez maybe on his return. But Raikkonen, out qualifying a Renault in front of that back group, I've given it to Kimi. And ones to watch for tomorrow. Again, I've kind of made it blatantly clear that I think that midfield, that mid-group is going to be so fun to watch. Ricciardo in 13th. Vettel is my F1E1 to watch for the Grand Prix, starting in 11th. I would love Seb to have a great result. But Albon in 6th, I really want to look forward to see if he can have a big result. Maybe if one of Hamilton, Bottas or Verstappen retires, it's a perfect opportunity for him to snatch his first podium in F1. And Perez in 4th, having those two races out, I wonder how much fire that would have ignited in his belly. Sergio still going strong in the Drivers' Championship somehow, despite missing 2 Grand Prix. I'm expecting a big result from him tomorrow. And that is it from your qualifying report, your Spanish Grand Prix 2020, 10 past 10 your sprint race, and the Big Daddy event, the Grand Prix 10 past 2. I hope you enjoy. Fingers crossed it's an absolute cracker. Will Verstappen make it 2 in a row? Can Albon or Perez nick their first podium of the season? Not long to wait, guys. If you are new and enjoyed, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe. That button is down below. And if you did like, hit that like button. Thank you, guys. And I hope to see you in the next one.